And then I'm going to put myself on spotlight while I just also quickly bear with me as I get a Facebook live stream set up for this event. Okay, I think that we are streaming, so I will kick us off for the evening. Welcome, happy Tuesday. My name is Jonathan Cohn. I'm the secretary of the Boston Ward 4 Democratic Committee, and we, along with our other hosts this evening, are delighted to have you join us to talk about some key races that will be on your ballot this September. A few quick words about our hosts, about the election, and then about our moderator. I want to thank the co-hosts for tonight's forum, the Boston Wards 4, 5, 10, 11, and 19 Democratic committees. As just a quick word, word of context for that, Boston is divided into 22 different wards and corresponding ward committees that do critical work of civic engagement in the city. The territories covered by the committees hosting this evening, Boston Ward 4 covers part of Back Bay, the South End, and East Fenway. Ward 5 spans Beacon Hill, Back Bay, a little bit of Chinatown, Bay Village, the little bit of the South End, West Fenway, and Kenmore. Back Bay, if I forgot to mention that. Ward 10 includes Mission Hill and Jamaica Plain. Ward 11, Roxbury and Jamaica Plain, and Ward 19, Roslindale and Jamaica Plain. So it's nice to have a good stretch of the city covered for tonight's forum. About the upcoming election, as folks should know, if you're here, the Massachusetts state primary election is coming up on Tuesday, September 3rd. That is the day after Labor Day. So do make sure to mark it down on your calendar ahead of time so that you don't suddenly come back home after a vacation and realize that it's election day. You will also probably be getting ballots even sooner if you've requested a ballot by mail, which you can still do so. If you haven't yet, those will probably be hitting in early August, which makes the work that we're doing tonight about informing everybody about the races on the ballot in September of such key importance. This evening, as our moderator will go into a little bit more detail about, we are talking about races for the governor's council in 2 different districts that include Boston, as well as the Suffolk County clerk for the Supreme Judicial Court and the Suffolk County clerk of civil business. That in addition to what we're talking about in terms of those elections, so in the Suffolk County races, just want people to know that if anywhere that you live in Boston, you are in Suffolk County, and you can vote for any of those offices. With the governor's council districts are each combinations of different state senate districts. If you're joining us from Boston, if you live in Will Brownsberger's district, in Alston, Brighton, or West Fenway, Kenmore, or a little bit of East Fenway, you are in the district, governor's council district, that have Marilyn, Devaney, and Dolan later in this evening. If you are in Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, the South End, Dorchester, Mattapan, South Boston, Mission Hill, Roslindale, West Roxbury, Hyde Park, possibly not other neighborhoods if I've forgotten some, let's say Bay Village, Chinatown, you are in the district. I think I've gotten all of the specific neighborhoods that are part of the district that has the race seeing Christopher Iannella, Ronald Iacobucci, and Stacey Borden that we'll be talking about shortly. So just a little bit of context about the geography of the races up this evening. Finally, a word about our moderator. Molly Coleman is a co-founder of People's Parity Project and People's Parity Project Action, and the organization's first executive director. PPP and its 501c4 affiliate, PPPA, build the power of law students and lawyers in order to create a legal system that works for working people. PPP, PPPA, and the 30 chapters nationwide use organizing and advocacy to fight for state courts that serve justice, federal courts that don't get in the way of democracy, and a legal profession that ensures the protections of the law are available to the many, not just the few. Molly is a graduate of Harvard Law School and the University of Wisconsin, and we are absolutely delighted to have her joining us this evening. And I'm going to put her on spotlight and take myself off. Molly, so happy to have you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you to the incredible committee that has been running this. It's really just so exciting to see so much engagement with these races that are so critical to the functioning of the state, to a well-run judiciary, to so many other things that we'll get into tonight. And I'm just so honored and delighted to be a part of it. I will say that my philosophy when it comes to moderating is to largely get out of the way and let our candidates actually speak. You did not come here to hear from me, and so I will not take up a lot of your time. So my role will be to get the conversation going. We've got a great set of questions in each of our 4 races tonight. We also, just a couple of logistics about how the night is going to go. So we are going to start with the first of our governor's council races. We'll be starting with District 4. We'll spend about 40 minutes on that race before moving into our 2 clerk races. So our first will be, let me make sure I get this order right. Our clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court race will have 20 minutes there. Then we will have 20 minutes on the clerk of the Superior Court, for civil business. Then we'll close out with another 40 minutes on our second governor's council race, which will be for District 3. So that is how this is going to go. For each of our sections, we'll have our candidates give a quick opening statement, just a minute or so. Then we'll go into some open-ended questions. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each of those questions. There's the opportunity, and candidates kind of know how this will go, but if you're mentioned by name, there's an opportunity to request a rebuttal. I'll remind folks of this at the beginning of each section. We are going to have pretty firm cutoffs, and we have a fantastic timer with us tonight who is going to make sure that we keep things moving. I'm going to let Nikki be the bad cop while I'm just here asking questions and not being the one muting candidates who go over. But really appreciate Nikki for doing that. And then in our governor's council races, we're going to have some rapid fire questions where we're just asking for a 1-word answer, yes or no, on a couple of different critical issues. So that's our general flow for tonight. I'll do some signposting as we go through. But without wasting any more time, I want to welcome our governor's council District 4 candidates. Jonathan, I think, will be spotlighting candidates while I do quick introductions. So the first candidate in this race is Chris Iannella. I am sad to say that he's not able to join us tonight. He is sick with COVID, but sends his apologies. And Chris is the current District 4 member of the Governor's Council. Next up, we have Stacey Borden. Pronouns she, her. Stacey describes herself as a powerful force for justice and reentry, blending her lived experience as a formerly incarcerated woman with her expertise as a substance use disorder, trauma-informed licensed clinician and activist. Welcome, Stacey. We're delighted to have you tonight. Second, joining us tonight, third of our candidates is Ron Primo Iacobucci, in honor of his late father. He is the executive director of the City of Quincy Workforce Development Department. Thank you, Ron, for joining us tonight. Okay, here we go. So like I said, we will have 60 minutes for, 60 seconds. Very important clarification. 60 seconds for opening remarks. Then we'll get into questions from me. You'll each have 60 seconds to answer each of the questions. If you are mentioned by name, you can request a follow-up. You'll get 30 seconds if that follow-up is granted. I think that's basically everything. So let's dive in. My first question, and Ron, I'll send this to you first, is why are you running, or I'm sorry, to start with your opening statement.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, and thank you to the 5 Democratic ward committees for this opportunity to tell you about myself and why I'm running for governor's counselor. It's simple. I want to take my skills and experience in the private and public sector and put them to work for you as your governor's counselor to drive positive change to make things better. Presently, I oversee the publicly funded workforce system in the South Shore. And I witness firsthand every day the effects our judicial system has on the lives of the people that we're trying to serve. People with barriers to employment like reentry and addiction and mental illness. People that we're helping to get back to work. And our judicial system can do better for these people. I'm no stranger to Boston. I'm an original West Ender. My family came from one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city until it was destroyed. For 4 years, I worked. For 4 years, I worked in the Kevin White administration, and for part of that time, I served as a little city hall manager, representing many of the neighborhoods that are here tonight. I'll be on the ballot on September 3rd as Ronald Primo Iacobucci, as you mentioned, to honor my dad, who passed away last year.
You did your Zoom already?
And Ron, I'm sorry, we are at time. So, and again, this will go for the rest of the night. Gonna keep it tight. Once candidates go over, we'll be muting you and inviting our next candidate to join in. Thank you so much for that opening, Ron. Stacey, I will turn it to you.
Thank you so much. Friends, esteemed colleagues, and fellow citizens, today I stand before you as a powerful force for justice. Blending my lived experience as a formerly incarcerated woman, as Molly described, expertise in substance use disorder, trauma-informed, licensed clinician, and activist. I embody the resilience and transformation that define the human spirit. As Democrats, we share a vision of equity and opportunity. True progress hinges on affording every individual, regardless of background or past mistakes, equal rights and opportunities. Today, as we convene to discuss the Governor's Council pivotal role in shaping our state's future, we amplify the voices too often silenced and marginalized. Those impacted by mass incarceration, systemic racism, and economic inequality. I bring to this forum not only personal experience, but also a deep commitment to advocacy and forum. Our criminal justice system must evolve from perpetuating cycles of punishment to prioritizing rehabilitation and restoration. We must invest in comprehensive support.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm sorry you've been muted, but thank you both. So there are many offices you could run for. There are many ways to be civically engaged. To start us off, I'd like to hear both why you are running for governor's council and what's drawing you to this office in particular. And Stacey, we'll start with you this time.
So for many years, as I said, I'm formerly incarcerated. I have been in and out of the court system. I have sat around the criminal justice roundtable through the Harvard Kennedy School under Justice Butt, really discussing discriminatory practices and really looking at the Governor's Council. We just feel like there's just too many prosecutors being placed, and we can't serve that way. And we have not been able to really allow our people to come out of these prison environments and give them a better life, a better service to our communities. And so I'm running for governor's council so we can really vet these type of nominations. I don't think we're doing a really good job sitting in those seats. And so I have thought about this for many years, and I think that I'm a better candidate to really vet judgeships and parole board members. Was that my time again?
I think we're close. Yes. Thank you. Ron, over to you. Same question. Oh, and Ron, you're still muted. We are not hearing you.
There we go. How's that? All right, start that clock now. Thank you. So look, I'm running for governor's council because it's just very simple. I don't want to be a rubber stamp on appointments or on spending money. I want to take a more proactive role as a governor's counselor and take leadership in bringing people together. I don't have all the answers, but I want to bring people together, all the people that touch our judicial system. I think a governor's council needs to provide that leadership to start looking at how we can make things better. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I'm also running because I think we need to be more accessible to the public that we serve. As I'm campaigning around this district, and I've been to every one of the 19 communities, people don't know what the governor's council is, and they don't know who the governor's counselor is. And I think we need to change that. And I intend to work very hard to be accessible and to be open. My style of leadership is to listen and to learn and to advocate for people. And that's the kind of governor's council that I want to be and I want to bring. And the prime reason I'm running, as I said in my opening remarks, is the justice system, judicial system touches the work that I do, and I see the effects that it has. And that's why I want to get involved and try to make it better. That's the reason why I'm running.
Thank you both. And I will say you both touched on themes that we'll be talking more about tonight, including the accessibility of the Governor's Council, democratic engagement with the council, and also the impacts that the council's decision has on the criminal legal system writ large and opportunities for folks who have had contact with the criminal legal system. So thank you both for those. Those are both themes we will continue throughout the night. Let's hear a bit about your backgrounds. What prepares you to serve in this capacity? Ron, we'll start with you.
So I've been both public sector and private sector experience. I've been in workforce development now for over 20 years and have taken a leadership role as the executive director of something called Mass Hire. And we cover the South Shore. We cover Quincy all the way down to Plymouth. It's 22 communities. And so it's that management experience that I have. And I think that's important to bring. I've also worked in the private sector as a CEO of a nonprofit organization. I've worked as a manager of a cable company. I've also worked as a general agent for the building trades. I'm very proud of my service with the unions in fighting for jobs and justice and working very actively on project labor agreements that put men and women, union men and women, back to work. So I'm proud of that. I'm the co-founder of something called the Adam Walsh Child Resource Center. If people remember Adam, they remember missing and exploited children. We created that center so that we could work hard to put stronger child protection laws in place. And so that's some of the background that I bring in the public sector and also in the private sector that I think could make a difference. I'm not an attorney.
Oh, thank you, Ron. And Stacey, over to you.
So I bring
Oh no, Stacey, I think you're frozen.
Did I freeze? I'm so sorry.
You did, but you're back.
I'm back. Okay. So I bring my my mental health background. I have a master's in mental health. I have a license in substance abuse counseling. I am trauma-informed certified. I have been working in the criminal justice system since my release in 2010 and really guiding people out of the carceral system back into community and family. And I think that it's important to have someone on the Governor's Council that has this type of expertise. Besides, I'm a woman of color. We haven't had a person of color on the Governor's Council since 1990, and that has been one since 1629. And we haven't had that type of representation for our Black and brown communities. And so, you know, doing the reentry work that I do, really seeing how people can thrive, really connecting with judgeships and allowing them to consider alternatives to sentencing is what we need on the Governor's Council. Again, we haven't had that even on the board. Parole.
Thank you, Stacey. For this next question, I'm going to ask you both to think both about yourselves as candidates, but also as voters, people who have voted in elections for Governor's Council before. In 60 seconds, tell us what traits are most important to you in a member of the Governor's Council. And Stacey, we will hand it to you first on this one.
Well, you know, as Mr. Iacobucci said, we haven't heard anything about the Governor's Council. all 19 townships, Democratic town hall committees, even in our own communities, all of Boston has not even heard of the Governor's Council. And so that is what we need to bring. I mean, even on the ballot, we don't have Governor's Council on the ballot. So what traits would we want? We want someone who has empathy. We want someone who knows how to vet specific nominations that are coming in front of us. We have 60% of Governor Baker's nomination that has come from prosecutors. Again, we can continue to do these type of nominations and accept these nominations to continue to move the criminal legal system forward with, a change. We need someone who's ready for that change. I'm ready for that change. I'm ready to really vet these people who continue to say that they want to do change, but we continue to perpetuate the same people, especially on the parole board. We need more sociologists. We need people that are, coming from social work.
Thank you, Stacey. Ron, over to you. Oh, and Ron, you are muted.
Try that. There we go.
There you go.
So recently the spotlight's been on the Governor's Council. Believe it or not, it's been on the Governor's Council with the Governor's Supreme Judicial appointment, with the marijuana pardons. I think it's important that in the private sector we talk at customer service. I call it customer service. In the public sector we call it constituent service. Someone that can practice those things and do them well, so that you'll be accessible. Now we have a great network. It's a big district to cover, but we have a great network of elected public officials, 5 state senators, 22 state reps, mayors, counselors, select board members, school committee members. I intend to communicate with these folks on a constant basis, to listen to them, to hear what the concerns and problems are, and to be a Governor's Council that's going to be more than just, like I said before, rubber stamping, appointments and spending. We need someone that's going to be able to carry some of the water for some of these elected public officials on issues that are important to them. So whatever influence I have as a counselor to the governor, I intend to use to support my district and be more proactive. And I think that's the kind of person we want to see on the Governor's Council. And that's the kind of person I intend to be.
Thank you both. So my next question, advance warning, a lot for a minute, so do your best. The question on the table, what factors will you consider when determining whether an individual should be confirmed as a judge, a member of the parole board, or a member of any of the other boards and positions considered by the council? How much weight or importance do you give to each of those factors that you would consider? And would you intend to have any litmus tests as you are considering those nominations? Ron, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so the popular expression is temperament, character, experience, and legal skills, right? And those are the things that obviously factor into making decisions. As far as a litmus test is concerned, I don't know if I would have a really firm test, but I would certainly be concerned about what candidates have to say about the right to choose, about the death penalty, about affirmative action. I think those are things that are important. But basically, you're looking at intellect, integrity, work ethic, judgment, temperament, experience, competence, unwavering commitment to equal protection, for all, and a demonstrated capacity and propensity to sensibility, intelligibility, promptly, impartially, and independently interpreting the laws and administering justice. Those are the things that I would want to see. And I would want to see some real examples of compassion in a person's life and empathy in a person's life. Give me some of those examples, because that's the kind of thing we want to have in some of these judicial appointments and some of these other appointments that we're making decisions on. And I think that's the process that I would go through. And I think each of them carry, for me, a lot of weight in terms of making decisions on who we want to put. I think the other thing too is it's important.
We'll have to save that other thing for a future question. Stacey, same question to you.
So, that is something that the reason why I really want to get on this Governor's Council is really to ask these specific questions for these nominees. Again, empathy is really, really important. And what do they know about community? What do they know about alternatives to sentencing? What do they know about the parole board allowing people to be released on clemency or commutation? So the question is, how do we vet them in that type of manner? How do we ask them these type of specific questions to say, do you know of any alternative to sentencing? Do you know any programming? Are you willing to think about and consider the humanness of an individual that has substance abuse or mental illnesses? Are you aware of, like, just name one program, especially in the Black and brown communities, because we know the disproportionate of sentencing guidelines. We know that our parole board members aren't properly vetting or looking at these people and asking the right questions for people to be coming home.
Thank you, Stacey. And I have good news for both of you on this one, because this is so critical that I want to give us one more iteration of a similar question. Thinking about the questioning, you will be questioning candidates in this role and nominees in this role. What issues specifically, and you've both touched on this a bit, but again, another minute to talk about what issues you would prioritize during questioning and confirmation hearings. And Stacey, we'll let you continue.
Can you say that again, Molly? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just what issues would you prioritize during questioning during confirmation hearings?
I think the issues is, again, because I deal with the criminal justice system so heavily, I think the issues is we have 2.2 million people in prisons. We have a power that people can use a pen and give people clemency, commute sentences. And that is really our focus. How are we really looking at this legal system? How are we really vetting these type of judges that are coming in front of us that are often, we have attorneys that are on the board now that are often practicing and going in front of the same people they appointed? I mean, where's our ethical standards? Are we really looking at the system as a whole when you're sitting around having this type of power? Is anybody going in the prison systems talking to individuals that are ready for commutation or clemency? And so, this is an important race. Again, we don't know about the Governor's Council. Not many people know that it even exists. It has been a hidden secret. And so I'm not sure if I'm on the right track answering that, Molly. I'm just trying to get these answers in that are really important, because we have this audience right now. And these are the things that we should really be discussing. And so.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was certainly responsive to the question. Ron, same question over to you. Got the mute.
All right, we're unmuted. So in all the experience I've had in workforce development, it's constantly vetting people to put right people in the right jobs. I say aces in their places. I think those are the kinds of skills and experience I could also bring to the Governor's Council in vetting some of these judges. I was going to say before that we want to have applicants who represent not only geographically diverse parts of the Commonwealth, but also our citizens' diversity of race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, and economic status. Those are the kinds of things that I would be advocating for as your governor's counselor, to hopefully push, those things through the process so they can come to us and so we could fulfill those concerns. The other thing is, what would I do differently that the governor's council is doing now? And one of them was just recently the marijuana pardons. I applaud the governor's courage in issuing pardons. I think we're moving in the right direction. But the marijuana pardons, there were two things, and I testified at that hearing. One was, we're granting pardons, but in my area of workforce development, the record is still there. We need to take the next step and expunge the record. If we don't do that, the record is still there, and the bias is still there, and the problem is still there. So the pardons don't mean anything unless we go all the way. And the other concern I had was relative to these blanket pardons, was the fact that we should have been consulting the State Ethics Commission. You're issuing pardons, and you're voting on something, and are we recusing ourselves, or we have conflicts of interest? We could be pardoning a brother, a friend, a contributor, a business associate. I mean, we need to take these steps, and we need to be more accountable. That's not.
So in both of your questions, you're doing a great job of transitioning me into my next questions. So much appreciated. I'd love to hear you both share a bit about what role you see the Governor's Council in playing in these critical social issues of our time, specifically in helping to end mass incarceration in Massachusetts and in advancing justice for working people in the state. And Ron, feel free to unmute and continue on this one.
There we go. I've said it before. I think it's just taking a leadership role. It's more than just being that rubber stamp on appointments or that rubber stamp on spending. I mean, that's a concern that I have. Is a governor's council should be doing more, should be connecting to their constituents more, should be representing them better. And should be advocating on the issues that you're talking about, and pursuing things and bringing people together. You have that responsibility, and we're not taking that. I mean, we're just basically going to a meeting once a week, maybe conducting interviews outside of that, and that's it. I think a governor's council needs to be doing more in terms of providing leadership to address these critical issues that affect our judicial system. And that's the kind of governor's council that I want to be. And I think that's all the difference in the world in terms of what's happening right now. And that's part of the reason why people don't know what the governor's council is or who the governor's counselor is. And I think we need to change that. We need to make the difference to change that. We either make it work, or there's some people that just want to get rid of it. So let's make it work. I want to try to make it work. I want to try to make it work.
Thank you, Ron. Stacey, same question over to you.
Yeah, that's a heavy question when we think about mass incarceration. And, when we start really advocating, we need more judgeships and parole board members, again, as I said, that have the discretionary power to use it. Right. And so we can always do alternatives to sentencing. I don't think a lot of people really know what a prison system is like. It's punishing. It is often violent. And people come home and they haven't gotten any help inside. What do we expect them to be when they come home? And so if we are vetting the right people, the right judges and parole board members, they can have this type of power in not sentence someone. We can lessen, as we have in Massachusetts. We are one of the lowest incarceration population in history in the country. And so we continue to vet the right judges and the right parole board members that have the background, that have substance abuse or psychology and really understand empathy and use the power to ask one person in the courtroom or on the parole board in that room if they have empathy, if they can humanize people, we can lessen the numbers of mass incarceration.
Thank you both. Continuing on the topic of criminal legal reform, Governor Healy late last year released a new set of guidelines for the use of the governor's clemency power. I would love to hear both of your thoughts on those new guidelines. And then if you could share a bit more, again, we've gotten some sense of this, but share a bit more about how you would approach the work of pardons and commutations generally. Stacey, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that Governor Healy really took a look at those. Those were really written, a lot of from the people through Patty Gurin from Northeastern University. And, it's a great start. The role of the Governor's Council as to why I want to run is I enter these prisons a lot. We have people buried in these prisons that have done decades, that are educated, that have done a lot of programming that are offered in the prison systems. And I think that we need to be able to go into the prisons and help people fill out these type of applications because the guidelines are new and different. And we have an opportunity now that I don't think that the Governor's Council's role as it is often takes that step to go in the prison and sit down with these individuals and give them the opportunity to fill out these applications that are guided by this guideline. We have that opportunity to do that now, and that's why I would hope for your vote and your support to have me as one of your governance councils.
Thank you, Stacey. Ron, over to you.
So one of the prison accountability, right? So one of the first acts as a governor's council will be to visit the prisons and obtain firsthand a look at the issues that are confronting the Department of Corrections. I'd like to do that right off the get-go. It's something that I've been involved with in workforce development. I'm partnering now with Norfolk County Sheriff Pat McDermott on something called HOPE, the HOPE Center. And that's taking folks that are coming from behind the wall, and we're giving them hope. We're giving them an opportunity to help them with their housing, to help them with their addiction, to help them with daycare, to help them with transportation. And my role is to help them find a job. And you know, we've worked very hard to put grants in place to fund these types of programs, working with the Commonwealth's Office of Public Safety. So I support what the governor's doing. I think it takes courage to do that. Not many governors have pardoned anybody in their term, let alone their first year of their first term. And I think I can work with this governor, to make a difference in these people's lives. Because this is what I see in workforce development. These people that want to move up, they want to get more education, they want to get a better job, they want to get a job, and they can't because of the background and the history. And we need to be working together to change that. So yes, I would definitely support what she's doing and continue to work with everybody to make it work, to make it happen.
So we've spent quite a bit of time now on the criminal side of the legal system. And for the next couple of questions, I want to switch gears to the civil side, recognizing that the judges or the judicial candidates considered by the council would go on to have big impact on what civil justice looks like in the Commonwealth. As a future member of the Governor's Council, what do you perceive your role to be in considering a judicial nominee's potential to reduce or eliminate rights of civil litigants? Ron, we'll start with you on this one.
I think I just unmuted myself. Okay, great. I'm sorry, reduce or eliminate the rights of
Civil litigants.
So let me share an experience that I just am having recently. It just speaks to the question that you're asking. I hope it speaks to the question that you're asking. So there was a young Black man that came into our career center, and he's now fighting, unfortunately, to instead of innocent until proven guilty, he's guilty until proven innocent. And I've actually, we've got him into training. He's going for a CDL license. He worked with children for many years. He's so gifted in working with these kids, but yet he's being accused of assaulting a kid, which I believe is absolutely untrue. And I've accompanied him, now it's 7 times, into the Rentham District Court, and it's seen absolutely nothing happen. This kid can't go back to work. He's struggling. Like I said, we're trying to help him. And I think it gives me a glimpse into what's going on. Now, I'm not to say that there aren't some great people that are working in the court system and that are trying to make a difference, but I think everybody will say we could do better. And that's what I'd like to do as a governor's council, is bring people together to make sense out of this and see what we could do better. Because this is a system that I don't want to say is totally broken, but from what I've witnessed, it's moving very slow. And it's hurting people's lives. And I think that is something, again, that goes beyond just rubber stamping appointments or.
Stacey, would love to hear your thoughts on the same question.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, not my line of work, not my expertise. When we think about civil matters, all I could think of is really, I would love for civil judges to move over and be into the criminal matter, of course. But when we think about civil matters, I think about some of our formerly incarcerated people that have come home, and we've moved them through Families for Justice's Healing through obtaining CDL licenses, and then they get blocked, and then they have a civil judge that says they surely should be able to, if someone gets training, if someone comes out of a criminal matter into a civil matter, our civil rights should be taken in consideration and allow people to move on into their lives. That's the only offer that I can think of here until I can learn more. I mean, of course, I'm not on the governor's council at this time to know that type of answer, but that's how I think of what we should be doing in our civil courts to really focus on moving our people in these arenas to, again, humanize individuals and see if people are moving on with training in work enforcement and leadership, and give them a shot without us, really giving them heavy fines or just closing the door on an individual. I hope I answered that one properly.
Thank you both. Thank you both for that. So turning to one specific issue that's of critical importance, something that's kind of unique about Massachusetts. So the Massachusetts Constitution clearly establishes a right to a clean environment. This is something that we expect will come up and has come up in the courts, and that judges will be sitting with and wrestling with. What does that right mean to you? Stacey, starting with you.
Yeah, that is a heavy one. I come from Roxbury and Dorchester, and we know that a lot of our environment, a lot of our properties that have been built, especially when we think about going further up Mattapan, Dorchester area, that were dumpster sites. And, we know that a lot of our children have grown in some of these projects that I grew up in that really affected their lifespan with asthma and these type of hazard materials from just paint issues and growing up trying to maneuver that affected our brain, lead poisoning, asthma, all these type of hazard materials and hazard environments in our communities that I think are still affecting us from 1978 with just sheetrock. You know what I mean? That has really affected our education, that has affected our relationships, and just living in communities that come from these type of hazards. And I think that some of these civil judges need to understand that it is still affecting us today.
Thank you. And Ron, same question for you. Let's make sure we get you unmuted.
There we go. It seems to pop up every time. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Massachusetts Constitution clearly establishes a right to a clean environment. What does that mean to you?
Well, that Constitution was written a long time ago, right? And it's by John Adams, who's one of our presidents here in Quincy. And he also was the guy that wrote the Constitution back in 1780 that created the Governor's Council. So I guess we can thank him or blame him for what we're dealing with now. I think it has to evolve because we're not, what might have been meant back then is different from what it involves now. And I think we're talking about technology today. And there are some initiatives that we have advocated for in workforce development that promote clean energy, clean environment. We're also looking into something down in the South Shore with the blue economy. These are all initiatives that I think would make a difference. I mean, obviously, I'm a big advocate of cleaner, greener that we do in Quincy, literally going out there and volunteering to make things, to pick things up and to clean things up. So, I would definitely want to see that reflected in what we're doing relative to making some of these appointments and where people stand on some of these issues. They're vital, they're important. I mean, our planet is at risk, and I'm concerned about where we're going. So I think it needs to be reflected in the kinds of people that we're putting there, and that they're going to be supportive of these kinds of initiatives. And I guess that's what it means to me.
Thank you both. So we are coming up on time for this segment, and I'm sorry it has gone so fast. I am going to ask two final questions. The first, we know that the state courts in Massachusetts have critical lack of both demographic and professional diversity. The state bench is overwhelmingly white. It is, as was previewed earlier, an overrepresentation of prosecutors and corporate attorneys on the bench. To what extent, as a member of the Governor's Council, would you intend to participate in the recruitment of demographically and professionally diverse candidates to apply for positions on the various boards under the Governor's Council purview? Ron, we'll start with you.
Yeah, participate fully. And clearly the initiative has to come from the governor, which I'm hopeful that it will during Maura Healey's tenure. So, because we're just reacting to what she's giving us, okay? And that's a good place to be, and sometimes it's not a good place to be. But we could also say no. We could also say no. And it's very rare that these governor's councilors ever say no to anything. So, we need to use our voice to maybe stop this effort that you're describing and characterizing, and change it. And we could do that with our vote and with our influence as a governor's counselor. And I would hope that I could work actively with the governor so that we can make that change. We can make that difference. And that's something I would definitely be participating in fully.
Thank you. Stacey, same question.
So, I saw a peek of the globe this morning that Governor Healey has appointed people of color, in particular women. And, I think the question is, how many of those appointments were from prosecutors? And so I agree. I mean, I think we need diversity. We need representation. We need formerly incarcerated people who have lived experiences that need to sit in some of these seats, especially on a parole board. That hasn't been done yet. We have one social worker on the parole board. We have one psychologist. We have mostly police officers, probation officers, district attorneys. And again, that is not fair justice. That is not looking like justice at all, because how about you might have prosecuted someone before and now you're facing them to just coming up on parole. And again, there's not enough people of color. We don't have anybody of color on the Governor's Council as it is. Again, there was only one that was in 1990, and he served 2 years as a Republican. And we haven't had that representation since.
Thank you, Stacey. Final question. I would be remiss if I did not get us back to something that's come up throughout the conversation about how few people know about the Governor's Council. How few people know that they vote for this, that it exists. How would you specifically seek to increase transparency and civic engagement if elected? And Stacey, will let you go first on this one.
Can you say that again, Molly?
Yeah, how would you seek to increase transparency and general engagement, civic engagement with the council if elected?
I really strongly believe that we need community involvement. I believe that, and this is what I've been saying to most of the Democratic town hall committees, that we should be reaching back and involve our community. We really should be, as we start really researching, looking at the history, looking at these resumes of these nominations, we really should be inclusive of our community. We can't do this work alone. That has been a problem, I feel, in all our representations of our state and city government officials. Is we put people in place and then we act alone, and we shouldn't be. We should be including our community members, and we should be having these type of conversations. Who are these people that are coming up that's going to represent our communities? If we don't have the communities involved, what sense would it make that I alone would think that I have that responsibility and that type of power? No, we should be inclusive of our people.
Thank you so much, Stacey. And to close the segment out, Ron, over to you.
So I think I spoke to it before, in terms of connecting with our elected public officials in the district. They're in touch with their constituents. It's one way of communicating, and I think that's what we need to communicate. The other thing that we haven't touched on is something called term limits. It's always good to have some new energy, some new enthusiasm, some new people. So back in the early 90s, the state legislature passed a law that limited the compensation that governor's councilors could take to 8 years, 4 terms. And that set a term limit. Unfortunately, the Supreme Judicial Court found that law to be unconstitutional. Still in the books, but it's unconstitutional. I would uphold the spirit of that law. I think it's important that we have that kind of a turnaround. Nobody should be in the position for almost 36 years. And I think that is going to be transformative in terms of bringing new energy, new enthusiasm, new people into the process. And I think that's something that we should strongly consider. And could make a tremendous difference, I think, in the transparency. So I would be a strong advocate for that, and I would definitely adhere to that. And the connection with the local public officials, I can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you, Ron. I'm sorry we were not able to hear the end of your last answer, but cannot thank you both enough for joining us tonight. I think I speak for all of us. This was an incredibly illuminating conversation and really appreciate your time and service. We are going to switch gears. We will let Ron and Stacey go, and we are going to turn to our next race. This is for the Clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court, and I think Jonathan will be spotlighting our next 2 candidates.
Hi, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you both for joining us. So I'll say a few words on what this role is, although I'm excited to hear from our candidates in their own words what this office is and why they are running for it. Then I will remind everybody of our ground rules for this round, and then introduce our candidates, and we will be off to the races. So the Clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court is responsible for keeping the court's records, running court sessions, and acting as a liaison between judges and lawyers. They coordinate the SJC's single justice sessions. So when one justice acts as a trial judge to review various lower court rulings, they oversee bar admissions and lawyer discipline. It's a multifaceted role of significant impact. Again, I'm excited to hear more from our candidates about kind of what it is that makes them excited to play this role. In terms of how this is going to go, we have 20 minutes for this round. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each of our questions. If there's a follow-up question, moderator's privilege. If I ask a follow-up question, you'll have 30 seconds to answer that. And if you've been mentioned by name in the previous response and would like to offer a rebuttal, you can unmute, ask. If that's granted, you'll have 30 seconds to provide that rebuttal. And as you saw in our last segment, we are keeping things tight to get through all of this. So if your answer goes over a minute, you will be muted and we will have to move on to our next response. That's how this is going to go. I think that's it. Turning to our candidates. First up, we have Erin Murphy. Erin Murphy is a Boston City Councilor at Large and a candidate for clerk of the SJC for Suffolk County. Next up, we have Suffolk County Attorney Allison Cartwright. We are delighted to have you both here today. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your backgrounds in your own words. So I am going to turn first to Councilor Murphy. Would love to hear about why you are running for this office, what makes it important to you, and why voters should care about it.
Thank you. And thank you, Molly, for hosting us tonight. I'm happy to be here. So I'm Erin Murphy. I'm the City Councilor at Large, and I'm running for the Clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court. I do believe it's an honor every day in my current role serving the residents of the City of Boston, and I'm confident and ready to take on this esteemed position that you mentioned. It's an important role of the Clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court for Suffolk County. As someone who grew up in Dorchester, many of you probably already know me as I represent all of the residents of the City of Boston in my role now as councilor. I raised my family here as a single mom, taught in the Boston Public Schools for more than 2 decades, and now, like I said, serve on the council. I believe at this time, in this moment of democracy, that the people of Boston, Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop deserve an elected representative who will take an unwavering approach, making sure that the court system's caseload is managed responsibly, something I've done as a teacher for decades. I was a special ed coordinator managing.
Thank you, Counselor Murphy. We will turn next to Attorney Cartwright. Same question for you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm attorney Allison Cartwright, and I'm running for this position to be your clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court in Suffolk County because I believe in our court system. It should be fair, equitable, and accessible. I have built a 30-year career as a public defender on those three principles. Right now, our democracy is at a critical juncture, and our courts are increasingly under attack. It is very important that this clerk is able to run the state's highest court in a manner that is efficient, that has a lot of integrity and professionalism. That is what I would bring to this position. And as someone who has practiced in many courts throughout this Commonwealth, I know and I appreciate the role of a clerk. Quite simply, without a clerk, the business of the court cannot take place. Understanding that, I would be the bridge between the public who has elected me and those outside of Suffolk County, that bridge between the public and the court. And as an attorney, I have a more serious depth of understanding of what it takes to run a court, again, to make sure it's efficient.
Thank you so much. So we talked a lot in our last segment about how folks don't know as much as they should about the Governor's Council, and I've got to suspect that we have even more of an information gap here. So if a voter asked you, as I'm guessing they often do, what this office does, how would you respond in 1 minute or less? Attorney Cartwright, we'll start with you.
Well, what this office does, again, it serves our state's highest court. And this is the role that is critically important to the administration of justice, and especially when we're talking about the single justice session. Again, it's a lot of nuanced legal things that have to go into that. But put simply, if a case is in the middle of a hearing or a trial and one of the attorneys believes that the judge has made an error that is of significant, perhaps even constitutional proportions, they have a right to stop those proceedings immediately by filing a petition to bring that matter to the single justice. And this clerk is responsible for assembling that record, making sure that everything is there, is in order, and then, as I like to say, wrapping it up in a bow and presenting it to that single justice. That's critical. And that was done even recently in the Karen Reed case, where the judge had ruled that there should be a buffer zone on the motion by the Commonwealth. And
I'm sorry, we'll move on to Counselor Murphy.
Thank you. I believe that the number one important role that the clerk holds in this court is access to justice and making sure that those who want to be heard and come to the court know that the court is open and ready to be equity and access to them. Something that I know I do on the council now, making sure that people in the city of Boston know that when you come into the court, you're welcome, that we have staff. It's a small office. It's a total of 15 staff, including the clerk, 3 assistants, but that we're there, we're in person on many days. I know that there's days where people will rotate remotely, but that the court is open and ready to answer any questions. And if they want to file something in the single justice, that we're there to make sure that we help them through that process. Also, it's important that we're the keeper of the records. The judges need to know that someone is making sure that the dockets are in order, something I've done as a classroom teacher, but my last 5 years in education was a special ed coordinator through COVID. So that means I was managing 188 IEPs, which I'm not sure if everyone understands what that means, but if your child has an individual education program, I was the coordinator who ran those meetings and made sure that all of the special education teachers and all of the resources that the students were due by law were given to them.
Thank you, Counselor. Like we've discussed, there is a lot going on in this role. There's a lot to be thinking about, to be managing. What would your top 3 priorities be if elected? And Counselor Murphy, we'll start with you.
One would be to make sure people know that the court is open and available for them. The second is to continue on some of the projects that I know the court is currently doing, which is digitizing, something they started before COVID, but when the world shut down and everything went remote, they had to kind of catch up and do more digitizing of the record. So something that I'll make sure that we continue to do. I know that currently they're trying to finish that, and that will be done before Clerk Mara Doyle, who I do want to say thank you for her service for these last 36 years to the, to this court, but the case management of the system. So now that we know many people file online, but also making sure that if anyone wants to look up something we do on the city council through Legistar, that all of the dockets and all of the hearing orders that we file and have hearings on, people can access digitally. So something that I will continue to do once elected, making sure that when the full court, because right now only full court decisions are digitized because that's a final decision. If it's in a single justice court, we know that it could still go forward and have the full court make any changes to it. So making sure that people can access the records would be something I would prioritize. I feel like that is something that makes the court more equitable.
Thank you so much. And your top 3 priorities, Attorney Cartwright.
When I talked about why I'm running for this role, I said that the court should be fair, equitable, and accessible. So when we're talking about accessibility, I think that the court does need the clerk's office, not even just in the SJC clerk's office, but throughout the Commonwealth, needs to do more in terms of language interpretation and interpreters. We don't have, we're not performing very well in that arena. I would work to improve upon that. The technology, that's true. It is being digitized, and it's critically important to start getting some of those single justice decisions out there. I think that would be very helpful to attorneys as they are, trying cases and holding hearings. And the third
some
thing,
cheese with that or anything?
Oh, sorry, just want to make sure everybody, all of our attendees are muted. Thank you.
Okay, and the third thing I would do is to bring more attention and education out to the schools, out to even our younger people, to understand what democracy means and how the court fits into the 3 pillars of government. And that's something I would work very hard at, because I think that's important as well, that folks who are going to be users of this court understand how it works and not make the Supreme Judicial Court so sort of scary to people. I would definitely open up those doors and invite children and have programming. There is some, and I would work to increase that.
Thank you both. So we've heard a bit about your backgrounds over the last, 15 or so minutes. Would love to get specific. What in your professional background, what in your experience most prepares you to serve in this office and in this role? Attorney Cartwright, we'll start with you.
I think what most prepares me is having almost 32 years as a practicing attorney. I know court, I know law, I've been a member of the bar. So if I'm welcoming others into the bar, I am welcoming them into a space that I know intimately and very well. So that's one of the things that I definitely bring is that skill set. I also manage, I'm a managing director with the Public Defender's Office. I manage our Public Defender Division offices in Suffolk and Norfolk counties. I manage a staff of over 75 people. So I know how to make things happen, to make sure, and one of my biggest responsibilities is to ensure that my staff has the tools necessary to do their job. And that's what I would bring to this. Yes, it's an office that's not very large, but it's an office that's very powerful and has a lot of responsibility. And I would work to ensure that my staff has what they need to do their jobs and to do it better.
I'm on mute this time. Thank you so much, Councilor Murphy.
Or thank you for that question. So for the past 54 years, born and raised here in the city of Boston, I do believe that raising my family, single mom here in the city, and also an educator, 24 years in the Boston Public Schools. And my degree from college was business management, and knowing that in education and managing my classrooms, if you can manage 24, 4 and 5-year-olds, I think you can take on any task. But also, like I've mentioned, I was a special education coordinator also. So my last 5 years was the important role that we know many times we are up against lawsuits. And on the council, I advocate a lot for the special education services, making sure we're delivering them properly to our students, and something I did as a special ed coordinator in the schools, managing 180 caseloads a year for families and students on IEPs. And then also my time as a legislator. I'm a citywide elected official. I've been on the city council. I'm the chair of public health, homelessness and recovery. I've been a community advocate my whole life. Currently is the chair of Strong Women, Families and Community. So definitely believe that once I'm elected, everyone will in Suffolk County know what this court is and what this clerk does and what the role of this court is. I do believe.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. So 20 minutes flies by. We are not yet out of time, but we are winding down. So just a couple of remaining questions. The first, which I think will be of interest to everybody on this call, we've talked about top priorities. Really want to think about what progressive policies or programs would you implement if elected? And Councilor Murphy, we'll start with you.
I think, or I know it would be related to a lot of the things that I'm a strong advocate on the council. Language access. We're going through the budget process now, and I've been advocating a lot for different departments that matter, like the returning citizens. Workforce development is something that I'm a strong believer in, making sure that our young children have the education, if it's in high school that leads them to a path to college, or if it's in a workforce development training to get into the trade, something I've been a champion on. And I do believe that those are things we have to be thoughtful of in making sure that other people, and when I'm in the community, this morning I was at a school, that they see themselves, they could work in the courts. If it's at whatever level it is, that the court is somewhere that they could, make a living. And it's something that we want to make sure that they feel welcome there. So I do believe that the equity of the court is important, and that language access and making sure that the education is there for our residents of Suffolk County so that they know that it's a path for them if that's something they wanted.
Thank you. Attorney Cartwright.
Hi, some of the things that I would consider and to be very progressive would be to include staff, whether it be through internships or hopefully paid positions of people who are returning citizens. I think it's important that we not just talk the talk, but we walk the walk. And I have been doing this for, again, like over 30 years. And in the role I have now and the work that's being done at the Public Defender Office, we approach all of our cases with a holistic lens. We look at our clients, not only their legal issues, but we look at other things they may be facing. Perhaps it's substance use disorder. Perhaps it's being houseless. It could be a myriad of things. And I would try to bring that into the space of the court so that it does not seem like those halls are so hallowed and unwelcoming to people. So I would look to hire people. I would have a very diverse framework in how I do it. And I view diversity in a very broad lens. It includes, like I said, people who are deserving of second chances, of third chances. That's, again, what I've built my career on, and I'm not going to just drop that in that mindset. I bring that with me as a part of my skill set.
Thank you. For our final question for this segment, my favorite end of an interview catch-all question is, what question do you wish I would have asked you? And then respond to that question you wish I would have asked you. This will be our final question in this segment. Attorney Cartwright, we'll start with you.
Perhaps I wish you would have asked me what qualifications, because this is an open-ended job that anyone could apply for, just being 18 years of age, but what qualifications should be desired. And my response would be that because this is our state's highest court, I think it deserves to have an attorney running the clerk's office. And it should also have someone who has, again, a lot of managerial experience. When you look at the counterpart to this position, the clerk, the SJC, who represents the Commonwealth, that position is now open. And what are the qualifications that, the minimum qualifications that the SJC has put on that job description? Is one, be a member of the bar for at least 10 years, have managerial experience, progressive managerial experience. When they had to select, appoint Maura Doyle, that's how she initially came into this position. They hired an attorney. Why? At every turn, when the SJC has been asked, they have selected someone who does have that legal skill set to bring to this position. And again, this is our state's highest court. We don't want to have, we want no room for error if we can avoid that. And I think having someone that is an attorney that has that legal training and that background, I think that is very important for this position. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Councillor Murphy, final question to you. What do you wish I would have asked you? And what is your answer to that question?
Thank you for that. So what I get asked a lot when I'm out on the campaign trail and is why would I want to leave? I'm doing an amazing job in representing the residents of the city of Boston, and many people don't want me to leave, but I take that as a compliment that I'm showing up every day and doing a wonderful job. So I do believe that I'm going to bring to the clerkship the exact same work ethic that's marked my time on the council. I've worked hard to represent all the residents and all the corners of the city of Boston, something I campaigned on 5 years ago, and I continue to do even once elected, is I show up in every neighborhood. I ask questions. I don't just go where I'm comfortable. I go and introduce myself and get to know people and find out what people need. I often say that I'm never going to know what to advocate in City Hall if I don't go out into the neighborhoods, to people's homes, into coffee shops and places to hear directly what they want from City Hall. And I believe that once I'm elected clerk, I'm going to bring that out into the community. I'm going to show up and, right now I know how to get from Revere, Chelsea, Winthrop, those 3 extra neighborhoods outside of the city of Boston. I feel confident that my managerial skills, my time as an educator, raising my family here in the city of Boston as a single mom, and my time as a citywide elected official is the exact qualifications that are needed for this role. And I do hope that those of you on the call, many of you I know, because I represent you as your city councilor, I hope that you vote for me on September 3rd, and I'll continue to work for you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight and to provide a bit of insight into this race, your qualifications, and how you would approach this critical role.
Thank you for having me, Molly.
Thank you. Excited to turn now to our 3rd segment of tonight's forum. Let's see, I think again, Jonathan will be spotlighting our next set of candidates. We are turning now to the Clerk of the Superior Court for Civil Business. In this position, some similarities to in our last position. Again, we'll get a chance to hear from the candidates directly about what they would like to be doing in this role and what they see as the most critical aspects of the position. Generally responsible for maintaining the business records for civil business for the Suffolk Superior Court. Same rules as last time. I'm not going to spend a long time on them. You know the drill. We've got a minute. We've got to keep this tight. And let me introduce our 2 candidates. So first up, we have John Powers. John is the acting clerk magistrate for the Suffolk Superior Court Civil Clerk's Office. Second, we have Faustina Kathy Gabriel. Faustina Kathy Gabriel, known by many as Kathy Gabriel, is a candidate for clerk of the Suffolk Superior Civil Court. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation tonight. If there are no questions on how this is going to go down, we're going to dive right into opening statements. And John, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Molly, and thank you for the wards for inviting me to this forum. My name is John Powers. I'm the acting clerk magistrate of the Suffolk Superior Court. I've had that role for the last 18 months. I'm filling the unfulfilled term of Michael Donovan, who was clerk for 42 years. He retired, and I'm on the ballot in September to try to continue on this job. I've been in the court system for 40 plus years. I've been an attorney for 35 years. I was, prior to becoming the acting clerk, I was the first assistant clerk in the courts, in the Suffolk Superior Court, helped manage the courts, this clerk's office through COVID. Last year, we took in about 3,000 cases. We have right now about 5,600 pending cases in the Superior Court. We handle a wide variety of cases. We've got 8 regular trial sessions and 2 business litigation sessions. It is an administrative office that requires knowledge of rules of civil procedure, standing orders, Superior Court rules, what have you. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I'd like to stay in it.
Thank you so much. Kathy, we'll turn to you for your opening.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I thank you for having me here and for inviting me at least. My name is Faustina Kathy Gabriel, and I'm a candidate for Clerk of Courts for Suffolk Superior Court Civil. Now, but I was employed at the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Human Rights. I attained my administrative skills. I worked at the Suffolk Superior Court for 33 years, where I also acquired some legal skills and some administrative skills. I can apply my skills to run this office. I have the ability and the knowledge to run this office with my legal skills and my administrative skills. I was born in Trinidad, came to this country, wanted to learn the political system, find a job, educate myself, and those things I did.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's dive into it. Thank you for those opening remarks. I'm going to direct this next question to you, Kathy. Why this office? What makes it important to you, and why should voters care about it? Oh, and we'll need you to unmute.
Right, this office is very important to me because I spent 33 years working in this office and training other people as we go along. Now, I would like to see this office be open or accessible to all. I would advocate for legal support and pro bono services for pro se litigants who are seeking restraining orders or trying to preserve their rights, their constitutional rights. And there's an element of, which is something new, elderlies losing their homes to a family member or some other entity. I think the court could at least put those cases on a fast track when filed, so that these elderly their cases could be heard, and they could be satisfied with whatever happens. They don't have a long time to live, all right? Also, getting myself here.
Oh, and I'm sorry, that is all the time we have on that one. John, I will hand the same question over to you.
Well, thanks, Molly. Having worked in the court system for as long as I have, I see how important the court is when people come to our court in times of trouble. Nobody comes to the court because they're happy. Something has happened in their life, and my interacting with people, I recognize the challenges that they face. And the court, the clerk's office is the conduit between the public and the attorneys and the court. And our job is to make sure that we guide people through this process to make it as painless as possible and get them before court as soon as possible. It's public service, it's customer service, and it's valuable and it's important. And it's the type of thing that you don't need the court until you need it. And we're the first line to speak to people, to guide them through the process, and to get them their day in court.
Thank you. Thank you both. So we've heard a bit about the importance of the courts. We've heard a bit about the importance of this work. But I'll ask the same question that I did in our last segment. If you were talking to a voter who wasn't familiar with this office, maybe a voter without legal experience or legal background, how would you explain to them what this office does? John, we'll start with you.
Okay, so our jurisdiction is any financial disputes that might exceed $50,000, which in today's world is not much. We're also a court of general equity, and equity is a form of relief where monetary damages will not suffice. We're a court that issues injunctions, restraining orders, declaratory rights. We're also the main place to appeal adverse decisions from administrative agencies. So we see a lot of self-represented litigants who come in. Department of Transitional Assistance have denied them certain benefits, or DCF has taken their children away, or they've been denied housing. This is where you come to our court. We can handle anything from a complex medical malpractice lawsuit down to appealing a parking ticket and everything in between. So our court has the potential to touch everybody.
Thank you. And Kathy, I'll ask the same question of you. How would you explain what this office does to somebody who's not familiar with it? Oh, and you are on mute.
Okay. This office is set up to accept filings for property damages, personal damages, the rights to do something, as John rightly explained. Also, people seeking restraining orders, medical malpractice, and anything that would hurt someone that is seeking monetary damages. In a nutshell, that's what they do. We also would do proper record keeping, educate people when they come, or pro se litigants when they come, as to what to do, what not to do. Send out notices, do hearings, send out notices to attorneys and pro se litigants, set up jury trials or trials, motion hearings, accumulate pleadings for hearings and all that. So it is complex, but it's also easy when you have the help and the support to do whatever you have to do in whatever filing you may have.
Thank you. Thank you both. So as you were just saying, Kathy, that it's not simple. There's a lot going on, a lot to manage. What would your top 3 priorities be if elected to this role?
Well, one of my priorities is transparency. I would like to see the clerk be very transparent when it comes to appointing a successor. It seems like appointing a successor pertains to a certain group of people or a certain individual, and that has to change. It is the people's court, and the people have a right to choose whomever they want to choose by election. Also, I would like to prioritize the elderly losing their home to a sibling or an entity, and make that a priority, and perhaps put it on a fast track.
Thank you. Thank you. And John, your 3 priorities in this term, if elected.
One, for greater technological capabilities. 5 years ago, before COVID, we were not a digital court. We've made a lot of progress, but within my courthouse itself, we still don't have Wi-Fi. And there's a greater demand for video and remote hearings and e-filing. So we need those resources. Secondly, as I mentioned to you, we have a number of appeals from administrative agencies where people who can't afford a lawyer will be coming in trying to undo a decision of an administrative agency. Cases should be decided on the merits, not whether you can afford a lawyer or not. So I'd like to see some help there. And finally, we need more judges. We are now down 10 judges with another three or four more due for retirement. My courthouse alone, we're down 2 judges out of 10 sessions. So we're working at 80% capacity. We can't move through these cases without more help. And so I'm hoping the more judges are available and our candidates for governor's council will approve them, because we're starting to fall behind, and we made a lot of progress after COVID, and we don't want to lose that traction.
Thank you. And thank you for the reminder of how all of these offices interact and affect one another. It's a good forum to have you all in this space. Both of you touched a bit on this in your opening, but what concretely, 1 or 2 experiences prepares you to serve in this office? John, we'll start with you.
Well, I've been an attorney for 35 years. When I started off in the clerk's office, I was in a session. I was working with judges, working and interacting with lawyers and litigants and court personnel. It's a job where you can have an incredible impact. Judges make this. Clerks don't. We're not in a position to make decisions, but we can promise you the effort, and we can get you to where you need to be. And as an attorney, I recognize how important a clerk is to making sure that you can have a smooth road, so you can get before a judge and get a hearing. It's been a satisfying job. I love it, and I never thought I would ever run for office. The only reason I'm doing that is because I want to stay in this job, because I like it. And I think I'm good at it.
Thank you. Kathy, same question to you.
Well, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, what specific experiences, professional background, it prepares you to serve in this office?
Okay, I've had administrative skills from working at City Hall. I brought out administrative skills with me to the court system. I've worked in the court system for 33 years. So I've learned quite a bit within the court system. And may I let you know that you do not have to be a lawyer to be a court clerk. Our former boss was not a lawyer, and he ran that court for many years, and he did a pretty much good job. And John would attest to that. So we're not hearing cases, we're not litigating cases. We're there to manage cases, to keep a proper record, and to do other administrative duties as required. I can do the job. I have the ability to do the job with my administrative skills and the skills that I have there at City Hall. Plus my educational background would also play into this. So
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so last segment, 20 minutes goes fast. We are down to our last 2 questions here. The first, and Kathy, we'll start with you on this one. Building on those priorities, love to hear a bit more about the progressive policies or programs that you would implement if you were elected.
Okay. I'll go back to the elderly losing their homes unfairly to a family member. I would build on that. I would perhaps prioritize those cases and make them put them on a fast track. Also, when I was there, we needed more judges. We needed more clerks, assistant clerk magistrate. We need individuals to assist pro se litigants when they come into court, and perhaps give them pro bono. I would advocate for pro bono assistance for these pro se litigants.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And John, same question to you.
My predecessor, Mike Donovan, graduated from law school, so he had legal background. We are a judicial function, and so we see what happens when judges are flying flags upside down, or are taking trips with rich Republican donors. Our job is to be fair and to be equal, but I would advocate for greater resources for the unrepresented, because again, I don't think it is fair that somebody comes into court and is going up against somebody who has a lawyer. Cases have to be decided on the merits, not by whether somebody has an attorney or not. So greater resources will allow us to do our job better.
Thank you. We can do a very quick rebuttal there. Yep.
Okay, our clerk magistrate, Michael Joseph Donovan, became a lawyer way after, I believe in the 90s. So he ran that courtroom without being a lawyer, and he did a pretty good job at it. Number one. Number two, I talked about the transparency issue. It is unfair for a clerk magistrate to appoint a successor behind closed doors. The general public do not have the opportunity to elect that person. So you're doing a disservice to the voters. When I did my nomination papers, I was constantly asked, are you running against so-and-so who's running for the Supreme Judicial Court? Are you running against so-and-so who's running for the Probate and Family Court? I had to explain the composition of the various courts of the court system.
Okay, and that is all the time that we have in that 30-second rebuttal period. I know that we could go back and forth here, but I want to make sure to give you each a chance to wrap up. So final question, we'll do the same as last segment. What haven't I asked you that I should have, and what is your answer to that question? And on this one, we will start with you, John.
I think I would wish you'd ask me what makes you most satisfied in the job you do, and what makes me satisfied is having somebody walk out of the clerk's office feeling that they've been listened to, that the process has been explained to them, and they understand that what the process is. So many people who come to our court, we may be the first entity that actually listens to them and tries to help them. Customer service, we can't promise you the result, but we can promise you the effort. And it's something that I find very satisfying. I enjoy it. Customer service is public service, and I'd like to continue on in that role.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Kathy, same question to you to wrap us up. Oh, you're muted.
What should you have asked me? I think we should have delved more into the transparency of the court system, because too many times we have pro se litigants come in there and they're not really being helped. They need more assistance. They need pro bono attorneys to assist them to understand the filing of their pleadings or what to do. That does not exist. Also, there are individuals who are coming there to seek the rights to do something. If we could find the people or the resources to explain these things to the people, then we would be doing a good service to the general public.
Thank you. Thank you both. I will just say it's so inspiring to see the dedication to making sure that our courts actually work for people. I think so often, so much of this, the day-to-day of making sure that people are actually able to access the courtroom is overlooked, and really appreciate this conversation, both our last segment and this segment for our two clerk positions. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Molly.
We are coming up to the final segment, final race of the night. So we will be once again pinning our last two candidates here. And this race, as previewed at the beginning, is another governor's council race. This is our District 3 governor's council race. You heard our overview at the outset, but I know we've had folks joining throughout. So just a quick reminder, the Massachusetts Governor's Council is composed of 8 individuals elected from districts, as Jonathan went over at the top, each consisting of 5 state Senate districts. So larger than a congressional district. These are big districts. The council is responsible for confirming judges and members of the parole board, among other nominees, for approving pardons and commutations. If you care about the present, the future of courts in Massachusetts, this is a big one. You should absolutely care about the Governor's Council. I'm really excited to close out tonight's forum with another of these conversations. We are just waiting for some technical things to be figured out, it looks like. So I'm going to quickly review, and sorry for those who have been with us from the
I've
start.
lost it again. I don't see. Oh, okay.
I'm going to quickly review.
I can't hear. That's the problem. I'm trying to, but I can't. Is there any way that you can do anything about that?
So it sounds like one of our candidates is having trouble hearing.
All right.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
gonna move.
I do that.
Let's see.
I don't have any volume at all. I don't have any sound.
Sorry, everybody. I don't want to go over our ground rules if one of our candidates can't hear them. So let's give it just a second.
I'm on the phone, but I'm watching. Yeah.
Yep, but Marilyn, sorry to confirm, you're not able to hear me right now?
Oh my goodness.
This is a technical issue that is above my pay grade. Sorry, folks, give us just 1 second here to figure this out.
You're absolutely down on the very bottom left. If you roll your cursor over there. Yeah. You should see something that says start video. No. Oh, wait a minute. Start my video. Okay. All right. I did it.
Okay, we've
I have
got
I have no
video.
sound though.
Marilyn, are you able to hear us?
Marilyn, could you try calling in on a different device than you use for video? That you're on kind of current, that we can see you, but if you.
Okay. So I think what we'll do, and any member of the planning committee, cut me off if this is not what we should do, but I'm going to quickly introduce our candidates, since Marilyn doesn't need to hear that. She knows who she is, and then I'll get started on our ground rules. And if necessary, we'll start with a couple of questions for Mara, and then we'll just roll with it. But want to be respectful of everybody's time as it's getting late. So we are joined by 2 candidates for Governor's Council District 3 tonight. The first is Marilyn.
I can't hear anything.
Marilyn is the incumbent
Put on the phone. Put on the phone.
Of District 3.
I have to get this phone. I'm talking to you.
And then our second candidate is Mara Dolan. Mara is a public defender who has worked in our juvenile district and superior courts all across Massachusetts for 17 years. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
A reminder of our ground rules, we'll have a minute for each question. If there is a follow-up question, which probably won't have time for, but might ask them, you'll have 30 seconds to respond to those. And then there's the opportunity to offer a rebuttal if you're mentioned by name in the other candidate's response. You can request that. If granted, you'll have 30 seconds. I think we will have Mara ask you to start with your opening statement and then continue.
Thank you so much to everyone, to Boston Wards 4, 5, 10, 11, and 19 for having such a comprehensive forum tonight. These are really consequential offices, and I thank you all for giving them so much attention. If you're joining to learn about the Governor's Council for the first time, I thank you tremendously for doing your part. If you care who our judges are, and I know that you do, you need to care who your governor's counselor is. The governor's council confirms our judges, parole board members, and commutations among its other duties. As Molly told you, and I've worked for 17 years across Massachusetts in our juvenile, our district, and our superior courts. My clients are among our most vulnerable. and therefore the most impacted by the decisions of the Governor's Council. But all of us are. When I was in law school over 20 years ago, I remember one of my professors saying that our courts are about 20 years behind the times. Based on what I see in my work as a public defender, we're even farther behind than that. The answer lies in the Governor's Council, and that's why I'm running. I hope to earn your support tonight. My name is Mara Dolan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mara. I think we will just continue with questions, and then hopefully we will have Marilyn able to join us shortly, and we'll backfill if necessary. So, okay, Mara, we got a bit of this in your opening statement, but would love to hear why you're running for Governor's Council and what it is about this office in particular that appeals to you.
Well, I'm running because I'm a public defender and I know how much judges matter. And I know that no matter how much I do for my clients, I am limited if the judge they hear before does not understand the things that they need to understand. This is a little distracting. Could she perhaps be muted while I'm giving an answer?
We're trying. It looks like it keeps unmuting.
Okay. So there are a number of issues that I see in our courts that concern me tremendously. The first is how we treat people with a substance use disorder. Far too often, in fact, most of the time, people for whom staying drug and or alcohol free is a condition of their release, who relapse, because that's what happens as part of recovery, are taken into custody. They are sent to prison. It's wrong, it's expensive, and it doesn't work. Addiction is a chronic relapsing brain condition that does not respond to negative consequences. The science is very clear that incarcerating people is actually the worst thing that we can do. So as your governor's counselor, I'll make sure that all nominees understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery.
Thank you. You talked a bit about your experience as a public defender. Would love to get into specifics. What is it about that experience or others that you might have had that prepares you to serve in this role specifically?
Well, it is personal and professional to me. From a personal perspective, I've been supporting myself since I was 18. I came to Boston when I was 18. I didn't even have a high school diploma. I got a GED, which is great because I have clients who either have GEDs or they're working for GEDs, and it's very powerful to be able to say, hey, I have a GED, and they see what I've been able to do with that. I know what it's like to struggle and to not have the support that you need. So I'm keenly aware of many of the issues that my clients face. And I see that our criminal justice system at its best can actually support people and help them to get their lives back on track, which is what they want. But at its worst, it is overly punitive and makes things worse. That is not reflective of the values of the people of this district. And we need to fix that, and we can do it through the Governor's Council.
Thank you. And it sounds like maybe, Marilyn, you're able to hear us now. Is that the case, Marilyn? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, we will continue on then. Mara, we asked this question in the last segment, or I'm sorry, in the first Governor's Council segment, thinking both as a candidate for this office, but also somebody who has likely voted in previous Governor's Council races. What traits do you see as most important in a member of the Governor's Council?
I think understanding what's happening in our courts is critical. Having worked in them for 17 years, I understand issues that are playing out there that folks who haven't had that opportunity don't see. I see the racial disparity. I see the data that tells us that we are below the national average on racial inequities, and I see that playing out every day. I see the need for disability justice, and I was speaking earlier about substance use disorder and addiction. That's a disability justice issue as well. 15% of our general population has a disability, but in Massachusetts prisons, it's 40%. There is clearly a huge disconnect there. The disconnect lies with our judges and therefore with our governor's counselors. As your governor's counselor, I'll make sure that judges understand disability issues and judge people accordingly.
Thank you. Again, sorry, it sounds like we think Marilyn might have volume now. Marilyn, if you're able to hear me, we're just asking that you unmute or give maybe a thumbs up. We'll continue unless Marilyn we hear otherwise.
Plenty to talk about. I'm glad to go on, can give you 2-minute, 5-minute answers, whatever you want.
Thank you. Thanks for being so accommodating, and thanks everybody for bearing with us. We all know the Zoom struggles. Okay, so this is the tough one to answer in 1 minute. But Mara, what factors would you consider when determining whether an individual should be confirmed as a judge, a member of the parole board, or a member of any of the other boards that and positions considered by the council? How much weight or importance would you give to each of those factors you'd consider? And then are there any litmus tests that you would implement?
Sure. I do have litmus tests. As I've just said, they need to understand the science of addiction and know how to work to support recovery. They need to understand disability issues. They must be anti-racist. They must be ready, willing, and able to recognize our systemic racism and use every tool that the law provides in order to stop it. They must be completely pro-choice. Massachusetts judges have been making decisions involving cases on abortion for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they will continue to do that. The big difference between myself and my opponent, who voted to confirm an anti-choice judge to our superior courts just weeks after Roe versus Wade was overturned. I will absolutely never do that. Now, the makeup of the parole board is determined by statute. It's Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 27, Section 4, I believe. And it specifies the background that parole board members have to have. So certainly we need to comply with the statute, but we've got to have diversity of perspective. We need people from different backgrounds, people who are sensitive to the issues of the people who will appear before them, the ones that I've just discussed. And also, we need to have folks who recognize that if someone does not pose a danger, and that is the most important consideration. I'm a public defender, I'm not naive. There are people out there who do pose a danger and they should not be they should be behind bars. But if they don't pose a danger and they're in a position to get out of prison, to lead the life that they want to lead, to live the life they want to live, they have a home, they have a community, they can build a community, they can get work, they can be supported, and they have the supports they need, then we should be letting more of them out. And frankly, there's a lot of talk about pardons, and I'm all in favor of pardons. I think they're great when they're appropriate, but no.
Thank you. So, I certainly know that we have some of the answer to this question, but would love to ask directly what issues, either that you've already touched on or that you haven't had a chance to speak about, would you prioritize during questioning and confirmation hearings? Oh, and Mara, sorry, you're still muted.
Thank you. Character and temperament are incredibly important. I see judges yelling all the time. They yell at attorneys, they yell at defendants, they yell at court officers. It's wrong. We're supposed to be providing an opportunity. This is supposed to be a civil process, and we are supposed to be modeling adult behavior. So when a judge yells, when a judge does not have judicial temperament, it is profoundly damaging. I've seen judges do it in juvenile court. I've seen judges make children cry in juvenile court. So I would say, other than the things that I've already talked about, judicial temperament is incredibly important. And the way you find out whether someone has a judicial temperament is not by asking them, because of course they'll tell you that they do. You need to do a thorough enough investigation, talk to the people they've worked with, talk about what kind of a colleague they are, and really find out and make sure.
What role does the Governor's Council play in, or should the Governor's Council play in, both helping to end mass incarceration in Massachusetts and in advancing justice for working people in the state?
Well, mass incarceration is not something that happens, in a cloud somewhere. It's judges who are making these decisions, except for the decision on which crime someone is charged with, which is a decision that's made by district attorneys. Every other decision is made by judges. It's bail. It's whether someone is released on bail. It's whether they're released on personal recognizance. It's whether they're released on bail with conditions. It's sentencing, it's probation, it's terms of probation, it's whether they're found to be in violation of their probation or their parole. Those are the decisions that make up mass incarceration. So we've got to make sure that our judges have the right insights into human beings and into character, into the circumstances of the defendants who appear before them, so that they hand out the right sentences. Now, sentences are legislative as well. So we need someone who can work with the legislature to make sure that sentences are more appropriate. I haven't just been a public defender. I've done a lot of political communications work. I was the Senate President's Communications Director. I was the press secretary for the Secretary of State. I was communications advisor to Ed Markey's campaign. And I will use those skills coupled with the platform of the Governor's Council to advocate for those issues.
Thank you. And I just want to draw attention to Jonathan's note in the chat. We're just going to do this sequentially. So I'll continue the conversation with Mara. Then if we are able to make the technology work, we'll go on to a series of questions for Marilyn, Devaney. I also want to note that we're about 20 minutes into this segment, but since I've wasted a lot of time talking about our technical difficulties, we're going to give it a few more minutes if that's okay with you, Mara.
No, you've done a great job.
Perfect. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the criminal legal side of things. I want to switch gears to the civil system for just a moment here. As a future member of the Governor's Council, what do you see as your role in considering a judicial nominee's potential to reduce or eliminate the rights of civil litigants?
Well, I think rights are incredibly important. I mean, my life's work is upholding people's rights. So I would absolutely want to make sure that all nominees will do that. We're certainly seeing in the federal courts a really troubling and dangerous erosion of rights. So we've got to make sure that our state courts uphold them.
Thank you. So advance warning, this is a long lead into this question. Recent study that my organization, the People's Parity Project, did found that of 114 sitting judges that were surveyed in Massachusetts, nearly half are former corporate lawyers. Only 11 of the 114 specialized in representing injured workers and consumers while they were in practice. Only 2% worked at legal aid organizations that help poor people dealing with civil matters. All 7 current members of the state's highest court worked as lawyers defending corporate interests. And the disparity is even more glaring on the criminal side. 60% of Massachusetts judges are former prosecutors. Only 3% have worked as public defenders, representing people, as you know, accused of committing crimes who couldn't afford lawyers. What do you think causes these disparities? And if you were to be on the Governor's Council, how would you think about the recruitment of demographically and professionally diverse candidates to apply for positions that are under the purview of the Governor's Council?
It's a terrible problem. We have never had a public defender on the Governor's Council. That's one of the reasons I'm running. Since the Supreme Court established the right to counsel for people who couldn't afford to hire one in 1963, we've had 52 governor's counselors, but not a single one has been a full-time public defender. We have to have a voice to provide greater balance. And it is really troubling to hear those numbers. I had numbers from 2 years ago. Things have not gotten as much better as they need to. One of the issues that I have with former prosecutors being attorneys is that if you're a prosecutor, you never have a conversation with a defendant, not once. You never get to hear what their lives are like, what they think about, what their concerns are, what the circumstances were when they committed the offense with which they were charged. As a defense attorney, I do. The lawyer-attorney relationship, the attorney-client relationship is the most protected by our law. My clients can tell me anything and I cannot disclose it. So I know a lot about what their lives are like. A prosecutor never has the opportunity to do that. And if someone has only been a corporate attorney, they are not living close to the pain, as they say. That's one of the things that I will bring. I have personally lived it, but I've also worked with a lot of people who lived it. As governor's counselor, you don't just vet and vote on the nomination, you also have a conversation. And as your governor's counselor, I will have those conversations with the nominees to help them understand the things that I understand and the things that I've seen in my 17 years as a public defender.
Thank you. I'm going to turn now to our final question, which kind of circles back to where we started, which is just the fact that lots of folks are unaware about the existence of the Governor's Counselor and what its role is. how would you seek to increase transparency and the public's ability to engage with the council if elected?
Well, that's why I was thanking you all for doing this. I mean, a lot of my campaign is simply educating people about the Governor's Council. And one of the great things about that is when you tell people what the Governor's Council do, they all say, wow, that's really important. So more and more people know what it is, and that's great. So I encourage everyone to tell people this is really important. And you can condense it. If you care who our judges are, you need to care who your governor's counselor is. I do a lot right now. As I've told you, I've done a lot of political communications work, but I've done a lot in this campaign to help educate people. I've done a lot on social media. I publicized this forum on social media. I sent it out to all of my people on my email list. I will continue to do that. Now, my opponent does not do that. I think that's a real strength that I have. I know how to use a platform and to amplify things so that folks know. And I'll do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Again, thanks for rolling with some changes to the plan. Really appreciate you having this conversation with us tonight. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to now see, I don't know if anybody has an update or Councilor Devaney, if you're able to hear me. I think we might be good to go. We're just going to ask you to unmute if you're able to hear this. Okay, good. We are rolling. Welcome to Councilor Marilyn Devaney of Governor's Council District 3. Councilor, I'm going to hand it over to you for your 1-minute opening statement.
Pardon me?
I'll hand it to you for an opening statement.
Okay, I have to tell you, I haven't heard one word that said I'm having a lot of problems here. So even now while I'm talking, my voice is coming back again. Can I do something about that? Because it's
I am not sure. I know Jonathan was working with you. Can you hear my questions when I ask them?
okay. I'll do my best. But what I'm saying is that every word we say is coming back, repeated back to me. You know what I mean? It's like an echo.
Shoot. Well, yeah, let's just, if we can do our best, if you
All
want.
right. I'll try to do my best. It's too bad. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. In that case, then, yep, if you want to just provide a 1-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I ran for governor's council after seeing my friend beg a judge 8 occasions to keep her abusive boyfriend in jail. She had a restraining order. The judge told her, "You're wasting my time and you're wasting the court's time." A week later, my friend was murdered by her abusive boyfriend. I vowed to be a counselor who would justice for you and your families. I fought for reform and I succeeded. I successfully stopped judicial nominees from donating to the governor's council, governor, lieutenant governor, right up to the hearing. My work resulted in an executive order banning this current practice from every governor. I fought successfully a live stream governor's council hearings. My extensive reform have been made the judiciary better, less biased, and more qualified. I support in this regard returning hearings from the ACLU, Asperg, and other progressive organizations. I'm proud to fight against racial, gender, and sexual orientation. I go into prisons and I meet with Black inmates who are wrongly sentenced, and I'm working with commutations. And this governor is wonderful, and she's very supportive of that. I continue to advocate for pardons, and I was very pleased. Voted for the first time for people with possession of marijuana. That affected thousands of lives. And these are the things that I'm committed to. And I have met with every person, over 1,000, that have come through from the judge. It's important for me to know. not just go once a week into a, into a hearing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'm asking people to support me, to keep me working for them. I'm the only full-time.
Thank you. And so you've talked a bit about this, but would love to offer a chance for you to share a bit more about what prepares you to serve in this capacity. To continue.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The sound is coming back. I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. What prepares you to continue to serve in this capacity?
Well, why I ran was because I didn't know what the governor's council was. I didn't know how a judge got his job. And my friend was in a very serious relationship, and it was getting very dangerous. She had a restraining order, and she had gone 8 times before the judge. And the judge said to her, all she wanted to do is put him in prison, put him in jail because he was really violent. She feared for her life. The judge said, you have been wasting my time and wasting the court's time. And a few days later, my friend was murdered by her boyfriend. And so then I found out how the judge got his job, and I found out what the council does. And I looked at all of the things they do, and I said, I can do that. So I'm a reformer, and that's what I've been doing since I've been elected.
Thank you. Okay, multi-part question here, and it'll be a quick response, but what factors do you consider when determining whether an individual should be confirmed as a judge, a member of the parole board, or a member of any of the other boards and positions considered by the council?
Well,
how much weight? Sorry, a couple more parts to this. How much weight and importance do you give to each of the factors that you consider? And are there any litmus tests that you use?
Okay, for a judge, I want, first of all, to be competent and to be fair, to be experienced, and most of all, have compassion. And to talk about in fairness, and when I talk about industrial accident board, very important to me, because this is where injured workers go before a judge. And I want that judge to understand this injured worker is trying to put food on the table. So it's very, very important. And it hasn't ever been mentioned by my opponent. So those are things. In the appellate tax board, obviously, you want them to have that background. And in the parole board, absolutely, they have to believe in second chances. And I changed the parole board because when I first got elected, they were all prosecutors and police or former police officers, and paroles weren't coming through. And I looked at the statute, hadn't been in conformance for 30 years since Governor Dukakis, and it calls for differing professions going on. And so I went to the governor. I said, this is not in compliance. And every governor has tried to change it. And we now have a forensic psychologist, a social worker, and we have the chair has been in the parole system for 37 years. So I'm very pleased with that. When the council voted on the phone to stop the hearings going out, I couldn't believe it. I was furious. At our public assembly with the lieutenant governor, I made a motion to restore it. I didn't get a second. And I could not believe I got support from the ACLU, the Mass Parity.
I think we are at time.
We got it back. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikki. Okay. So we, appreciate hearing about those various factors. Love to ask a bit about how you gauge that in confirmation hearings and what issues you prioritize during questioning in confirmation hearings.
Well, first of all, as I said, I've met with over 1,000, every nominee from parole board to judge. And it's very important. I meet 2 or 3 hours because I just don't want to come in and once a week and on a piece of paper and meet this person. And so I'm very investigative, and I do find out their background. I find out where they worked. I talk to people who know them. And are we talking about, I'm talking about all of the boards and judge and clerk magistrate. Is that what you're asking too? Yeah, it's very important. And, you know, I will not put, I will never vote for someone, for example, for the juvenile court, if they haven't had a dedicated practice for juveniles. I mean, this is not just giving a robe to somebody. We have to have people that have been given their attorney's time in that particular aspect, whether it's, you know, juveniles or whether it's, you know, the district courts or superior court. They have to have the qualifications for that particular position.
Thank you. We've talked a lot over the course of the night about mass incarceration and the criminal legal system. What role do you see the Governor's Council playing in helping to end mass incarceration in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't know how others do it. I'm only going to talk for myself. I'm full-time. I'm a full-time counselor, which my opponent wouldn't be. So I have really looked into the racial discrimination in the court, and it is apparent, and no one can deny it. And I have been committed to meet inmates, Black inmates, because of racial discrimination, working for commutations, because some of them, it's so unfair, you know, the sentencing they have gotten. So that's what I'm working on. And I've got a wonderful governor who supports me, and we're going to have more pardons and commutations. And I've been waiting 8 years for this. So that's where I'm really, you know, dedicated myself to those people and to identify those people in prison so that we can release them, that they deserve.
Thank you. I want to note, given the changes that, since we're doing both of these conversations separately and didn't provide rebuttals during the first portion, we won't provide rebuttals now.
And I didn't hear anything from my opponent or anything. I've just got in now, so I'm so grateful that I can get in.
We are glad we got it all to work out. And I'll just remind attendees to make sure you are muted. Thank you. Okay, turning to the civil legal system.
To the what?
To the civil legal system. As a current member of the Governor's Council, what do you see as your role in considering a judicial nominee's potential to reduce or eliminate the rights of civil litigants?
I don't quite understand that question. Would you repeat it?
Yeah, so thinking about the role that judges play in potentially reducing or eliminating civil litigants' rights. How do you think about that in your work on the Governor's Council?
Well, I think we've all said it and believe it. We need fairness in judges. And that's why I think I can be very fair. I don't have any conflict of interest. I'm not a lawyer who's going to be looking for my lawyer friends coming through. And I was particularly upset to learn that my opponent had gone to court and she accused 2 state troopers of racism, and there was no basis for it. And she refused to give any documents to the opposing counsel because she didn't have it. And the judge was very angry, charged her, fined her $800 for this unfair. She had no evidence that there was any type of anything wrong with these 2 police officers, that they had shown no bit of racism. She couldn't identify it, and she was sanctioned in the court. So I'm thinking, gee, do you want someone like that on the council who acts like that in court and was trying to get 2 state troopers convicted when they were perfectly innocent? I think that's something you have to think about.
I'm going to invite a response on that one from candidate Dolan, just given the direct nature of that claim.
And that was 2007. I have the documents right here. Okay, so this is me. Yeah. I investigate, and that's what you need on the council. You need someone to investigate.
And Counselor Devaney, that is your time, so I'm going to hand it over to candidate Dolan now.
Yeah, no, this is a completely false this is a false representation of what happened. I have documents that I can hold up too. No, this was a case where actually there were some folks who were falsely accused of something. The judge found no probable cause to believe that a crime was committed, and so they were interested in a civil suit. I absolutely did not do the things that she says that I did. This is really where her lack of legal experience is very much evident. She simply does not understand what happened.
Thank you for that response.
Yeah.
We are going to, for the sake of time, we're going to move on. We had our one rebuttal, so we'll move to our next question. And this is, okay, apologies for those who are listening, you'll hear our long lead-in for a second time. But the question is about professional and demographic diversity on the bench. So we know that there is a lack of professional diversity within the Massachusetts courts. Of 114 sitting judges, nearly half are former corporate lawyers. Only 11% have experience representing injured workers and consumers. Only 2% worked at legal aid. All 7 current members of the SJC have worked as lawyers defending corporate interests. And on the criminal side, 60% of Massachusetts judges are former prosecutors, with only 3% having worked as public defenders. Counselor Devaney, what do you think causes these disparities? And what is the role of the Governor's Council in attempting to recruit more demographically and professionally diverse candidates to become judges and serve on the various boards under the council's purview? And sorry, Counselor Devaney, you are muted. Counselor Devaney, we cannot hear you. Let me, if you could unmute.
Okay.
Yep, you're set.
Well, that's a very good question. And I do go in my district and talk to people. And I just recently, last week, had a forum, which was the largest group that they ever had to come. And it was how to become a judge and a clerk magistrate and other board members. And I had judges and a clerk magistrate and people from the governor's office, because this is an open administration. And we're getting people that are qualified, not political insiders. And it was wonderful because I want people to come. I want them to know this is an open administration and they have a chance. I would have never done it in the last administration. I mean, we have someone in the Westboro court, the judge and clerk magistrate were co-coaches for the Lieutenant Governor Petitto. That's not what this is about. They were so pleased. Everyone came up to us afterwards and was so pleased because we had everyone. We had from the Judicial Nominating Committee, and that's the person you send your application to. I told, and it showed them the whole process. So I'm opening that up to people so that I want them to apply. This is an open administration. I'm over the moon. I can't be happier. We're getting people that are really qualified. And it was a wonderful night, and people were educated. And that's the kind of thing I do. I go out and try to educate.
I'm sorry, Counselor Devaney, we are at time on that question. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask one final question, which is that many people continue to be unaware of the existence of the Governor's Council and of its role. How do you, and would you, if reelected, seek to increase transparency and civic engagement with the council?
That's to me. Well, I'm going to tell you, the sad thing is that people don't know what the Governor's Council is. They asked me if I'm the governor's attorney. That's not the spelling, but anyway, council. But the point is that it is, to me, even if I never was on the council, it is the most important elected body. You know why? Because we are the only checks and balances for the governor. If the council votes no on that nominee, that person doesn't get that position. There's not another There's not another body that has that authority. People, but I got to tell you something. People think we have such authority, but because counselors went to prison 50 years ago for selling judgeships, a lot of our authority is taken away. So I want people to know we vote for all these boards and commissions, commutations and pardons, but guess what? We don't know who applies. We don't know how many. We have nothing to do with that process. We have one person before us to vote yes or no. So really, when you say, what is your job? It's to vote yes or no. But we don't have anyone working for us. So that's why it's important. I am your full-time and I am there. I go to the
It's
drug
time.
graduations. I'm out.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Devaney. Thank you to both of our candidates for District 3. Really appreciate the time tonight. I'm just going to, just for the sake of fairness,
Thank you
respond
for this
to everybody.
opportunity. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Really want to thank everybody for being here tonight and for taking the time to learn about these offices, learn about our candidates, and think about the future of Massachusetts. I am going to turn things over to Carol Lasky to close us out. And with that, I will bid you all good night. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Molly.
Good night. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Molly. Boy, as they say, the best laid tech plans, huh? This has been a remarkable evening, most especially because of your just phenomenal moderation, Molly. We've had 4 robust conversations, all aimed at opening these very important races for public understanding and public engagement. I just wanted to encourage all of you to get involved on the ward level. We do amazing work. I think this 5-way collaboration among ward committees is a testament to the kind of partnerships and civic engagement that can happen when we don't think in terms of silos, but we think in terms of really what's best and what's going to bring people, to the table. I want to call out wards 4, yay, 5, 10, 11, and 19. And in no particular order, these are the people who really made this happen this evening. Bob Binney, Andrew Bloniars, Rich Giordano, Chris Fries, Pat Flaherty, Annie Rousseau, Ryan Hatcher, Ziba Kremer, Nikki Kong, Jonathan Cohn, and Marie Turley. And of course, Molly Coleman. Wow, Molly, thank you so much. Just been wonderful having you. And I'm just going to close by asking you to jot down, wherever you jot important dates down, 2 big ones coming up. September 3rd is the state primary. November 5th is the state election. And we have so much work to do, calls to make, doors to knock, signs to post and hold out on street corners, and we hope you will join with us. Thanks for joining us tonight.